you for taking time to speak with me, my friend.
Thanks for having me. It's always good to speak with people about music.
I wanted to ask you about the creative process for you. Is there a formula for the music you create?
Uh, I guess there is. We just didn't know about it in advance. Hope is a lie is really like it's a reaction of a bunch of things, including the pandemic and just some of the other musical things that we've been doing, and felt like now's the time to explore some of the darker stuff. And we didn't know what we were doing. We just set out to let's get together, do some music, and see what happens. It turned into an album of songs, and now I think we know what the process is. We just didn't know it when we started, so it was all very exploratory.
I think
It's
it's a
yeah.
great journey because you provide different styles of music and put them together, and it makes such a cohesive sound, even though you're providing them different elements.
Yeah, we all have different backgrounds. We've all played in different kind of bands and other musical projects before. This was very much the three of us getting together. We started just jamming, like really long jams, 30, 40 minutes of repeating the same thing over and over. And we kind of realized that doing things slow, what turned into what we call like unhurried. That's our thing, riff based, but then it can go into places. Like we can explore some other things as well, and we can make it really hard, or we can make it slow, as long as it's really dark. That's like the only thing that matters.
And my favorite track on the album is Pure. I wanted to ask you, when you did that track, did you know where it was going to place on the album when you first did the song?
No, no, and even we didn't know that there was going to be an album at that point. We didn't even, to be honest, the song has different components that we were not sure from the beginning that it was one song, or like where those components going to turn into maybe slightly different songs. um I had the piano thing first off, and then Marcus said that he's going to try out some riffs, and he added the riffs, and then eventually started to sound like a song. And I was like, oh, I'll work on the vocal arrangements, and came up with the idea of like those very simple harmonies. And then I can't remember from where we were doing the jamming thing, and then like the whole outro thing with like this really long jam. We discovered, that fits right pretty nicely there. And then in the final ends of the recording process, Marcus discovered that the whole sample that we added to the end of like this the spoken sample about um it's a theory from, I don't know, if the 50s or 60s something, and everything just worked together. But it was a strange experience, and again, like the process was not known before. Now we know what it is.
And I think it's great because it's a standout track, and I think it really defines not only the band but defines what you're going to hear ahead. And the placement of the track is absolutely perfect.
Cool, I'm glad it worked, because yeah, placement of tracks was really difficult. Yeah, it was it was much more difficult than actually creating the songs, to be honest. So yeah, glad it worked.
And Into the Flames is another standout track for me. I wanted to ask if you could speak on the musical direction of that song.
And yeah, it's always good to hear, what are the favorite songs. That one is it's based on a really old thing I've had in my drawer for a long, long time. And I figured maybe now this is the place for that guitar thing. Again, kind of like a spoken wordish type of verse. But then the chorus is something I was working on for quite some time, and I wanted to make it big, and it had to be like a fairly big song. um, can't quite remember eventually at what point, because that one has an ending that is different as well. And then like I came up with with that idea. I wanted to make it really dynamic. I was listening to a lot of Almond Ra, which is like a Belgian sludge black metal type of band, and they do a lot of that like really slow, very dynamic thing where everything stops and then starts again. And I wanted to try that out. It turned out pretty nicely, and then it was Marcus's idea to mix the vocals the way they were done. There's a different vocal track on the left side and another one on the right side, which you don't do. That's kind of breaking the rules. Um, but he tried it out and we're like, okay, this works, we can do it, we can do whatever we want. So that's musically what that song is about. I wanted to make it quite heavy and dark and have that really big ending. And lyrically, it's the bleakest thing I've ever written. It was borderline difficult actually to record because the lyrics are just they're very bleak. They're really dark. There's no hope left in those lyrics.
And speaking of no hope, I wanted to ask, how did you guys come up with the name for the band?
Yeah. We had a list of band names of probably like 4 or 5 pages long. So like hundreds of band names. 2 stood out. This was one, and the other one was, I can't even remember what it was, but it was much more of, it would be fitting if we would be more industrial. And I think also it was a used name. So this one was the one that we ended up with. It fits the whole theme and direction nicely. I quite liked it when I came up with it, and like it connected with the others too. Originally, we had a working name that was really long, and we were considering it for the album too, which would have been Where the Woods End, the Cemetery Begins. So again, very bleak, very dark. No hope left because everything's gonna end. But yeah, Hope Is a Lie it stood out as one of the names from that long list of names, and it is pretty bleak too, to be honest.
I wanted to ask you as well about the album artwork and the artist that was involved. How did the concept come to you?
This is one of the nice things of I knew both Markus and Tuomo before the band, connected them to, and I know, so we were playing in Markus's studio, and he's a sound engineer. He knows everything about that process. Plus, he's a really good guitar player, singer, growler, so on. And Tuomo, who does drums, but he's also our arts designer. So Tuomo has done all the artwork. So our drummer is our art guy, which makes it very convenient for us. So we're almost like self-sufficient. We can write the songs, we can record them, we can mix them, and we have all the arts capabilities that we need to be able to do this, just the 3 of us. So yeah, Tuomo's done all the artwork. He is a metal guy through and through, so he knows the scene, the genre, and came up with the concept. We didn't want to make a traditional like death black metal type of logo. It had to be something slightly different than like the usual death metal logos, but dark, obviously. So that's where he ended up with, and we like it. Obviously, there's been a bunch of requests already for band merch, so that always shows that it works.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you as well, what's the next step for the band? What can fans look for next? Will you take to the road?
Yeah, so again, we had no goal or purpose with this. We just wanted to do the music. Hope Is Like got started, it's pretty much 2 years ago, exactly when we got together for the first time to do the first jam session. And we didn't know that we were making an album. We ended up making an album. The 3 of us cannot play these songs live. However, there are things now in motion to make us able to play these songs live. So we are looking at expanding the band at least a little bit so that we can do this live. I don't want to promise too much because it's happening, as we speak. But yeah, we're putting things in motion so we can actually play this thing live, because we think it's gonna be awesome to play these songs live. They have all the dynamics and the heaviness required for a good live thing. So no promises yet, but we're doing our best to make it ready for live.
And we've spoken about you 3 getting together and just jamming together. How did you guys get together originally and decide to go forth and jam together?
Yeah, it was. I called both of these guys together. I knew Markus from before because my other band, Flush, has recorded at his studio. So I knew him. I knew the kind of music he does. He has a multitude of bands, but his main band is Astral Sleep, which is a doom band. So I knew Markus's music. I know what he's capable of. I knew that he can growl, which was one part of like the vision for this. And I knew Tuomo from before, from other music projects. I knew he's a solid metal drummer. But everything is, for me, it's a reaction of the pandemic and everything happening kind of at the end of that, where I was feeling very dark. I was getting into a lot of extreme metal, which isn't usually, my other band is more punk alternative rock, but I was getting into sludge, some kind of more modern black metal. Always been into hardcore and things like that. So I wanted to see what is there in like the more extreme end of metal, and felt like the pandemic has given me enough darkness. I should channel that. So I asked these two gentlemen if they'd be willing to come to a jam session and just see what happens. And we started with some riffs and we played them for, I think the first thing we did was jam for half an hour on just one thing. And we realized that this is actually pretty cool and dark and slow. That's how it happened. No expectations, just some leftover riffs that Marcus and I had. And then that's how it started. That means we have freedom. So we have almost like ultimate freedom to do whatever we want, because nobody expects us to do anything. We haven't promised anyone anything. We haven't committed to a certain genre. So we can be post-metal, we can be sludge, we can be doom, we can be industrial, grunge, whatever we feel like.
And as I said, that's the beauty of the music, because you apply all them aspects and you make them work. It's one thing to apply them and they don't work, but it definitely works for this band.
Thanks. Really appreciate it.
I also wanted to ask you about your musical background. At what age did you begin your journey?
I would have been like in my early teens when I realized that I should play music. Music has always been important to me ever since I was a kid. And that was hard rock and glam and hair metal and all those things. But I think I was maybe 12 or 13 when I started playing. First it was keyboards, and then I grabbed the guitar. So my friends had bands in those days, and then I joined one of those. It didn't work out. I played keyboards in that band. It didn't work out. I was maybe 14, 15. However, that gave me the spark. It was like, oh yeah, this is something I want to do. And we started one band, and then we started another band, and then one of those bands actually is still around. And so I've been playing since. Completely self-taught and self-learned. And for me, playing guitar or music is actually about creating. I've never bothered to learn a song properly. I just write my own, and then I know those songs. Even if I learn a cover song, I'll learn it by ear and kind of arrange it myself. So I'm not a proper player, but I like the creative process of it. Yeah, that's how I got started.
When you're not working on music, what do you enjoy in your free time?
Oh, it's nowadays it is actually quite simple. Like the thing I enjoy the most is music in some shape or form. I have a son. He's 11, so he's obviously the most important thing for me in my life. He's that's my number one thing. But he's growing older, so he doesn't need me all the time. I do like drinking beer, to be honest, and whiskey as well. So I'll go out with friends or do some other things. But in terms of like regular habitual things, it's music, or then whatever my kid is doing. Yeah, but I am right after this. I'm gonna go for a couple of beers at our favorite bar. It is Friday night here. I'm 7 hours out of you, so.
Yes. And I wanted to ask you as well. And speaking of your past and everything, along your musical journey, as far as playing and being in clubs and working with other musicians, what do you feel has been the best advice that has been given to you along the way?
Yeah, plenty of advice, and I think like there's almost, I'd like to start with like the meta advice, which is listen to advice and then pick whatever works for you. We had, with my other band, we had the privilege of working with a very esteemed producer on our first album. He's one of the most known metal producers in Europe, I want to say. And there was so many things that we learned from him. But I think I'll mention what actually this is the same guy who's the distributor for the Hope Is a Lie album. I worked with him some years ago too, and he mentioned that doing a band like this where you start from kind of zero and you don't have a reputation, you're not at a big label, you're not a commercial product, you have to treat it as a marathon that is kind of like a shotgun kind of competition. So it's going to take a long time, and you're going to have to try out a whole bunch of things, and you'll never know which one is the one that hits. Hence the shotgun. And then the marathon is a long run, and you just kind of have to stay in the race. So yeah, it's like a shotgun marathon, a weird combination. But that's the thing I always have in the back of my mind. You never know what resonates with people. All of a sudden, it might be this therapeutic doom sludge post metal thing that you did because you had to, and all of a sudden that gets you speaking with Bob from Ohio in his podcast. You never know what happens.
And I wanted to ask you as well. We spoke a bit about this is pretty much a do-it-yourself project. I wanted to ask you, what is your view of the industry of today, and where do you feel it's going?
Yeah, this is kind of, for me personally, this is my first endeavor into properly into the metal scene, and I can already see huge differences between the metal world and like the rock world, where the metal world is very much active and alive and dynamic. There's some genres that within metal that I cannot connect with, but then there are some that are really interesting. Post metal seems to be kind of having another a really good run for the last few years, and that makes me really happy because it's a genre that challenges people. Like, you actually have to listen to the music, you have to concentrate. It's not a 15-second like a TikTok thing. You can't do post metal on TikTok, so that's great to see that post metal seems to be doing good. But in general, the thing that worries me, there are many things that worry me about the commercial models. I've actually worked in the music industry too, so I've seen kind of the inside of it. Many things that worry me around how everything works commercially and money-wise and AI and so on. But if there's one thing that I see in my own life, and personally, it is the fact that small independent venues, live venues, they struggle. We don't have too many of them left here. People don't go to see shows. People don't spend money on like the local bands. Seeing a local band here on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, it's like $10, €10. It's nothing. And still people don't go, but they'll happily spend 20 times that amount on some like reunion megastar arena thing where they have no new music. It's just like a sentimental value. And so people will spend money on music that doesn't create anything new. But local venues are struggling, and without local venues, we're not going to have new bands. And without new bands, we won't have new music that challenges and creates something new. So that worries me. Yeah, people should go and see live music across all genres.
And this is exactly why I do what I do. I graduated in the 80s, and a lot of my peers and people my age, they listen to the same songs over and over, and they haven't expanded their horizons since high school. When in high school, as soon as something came out, they're running to get it. Now it's changed. The dynamic has changed. And it worries me about people with playlists and things like this, because in listening to your album, I enjoy listening from top to bottom. I don't like taking individual tracks and putting them on a playlist, because of the fact that when I want to hear you, I want to hear everything that you created, because you worked as hard on song 4 as you did on song 1, my friend.
Yeah. And I agree with like the whole thing around playlists and Spotify stream counts. It's just not, it's not what a creative artist or musician should be focusing on, but it's what we have to focus on if we want to be heard. And I have way too many friends who don't pay attention to new music, and there's a ton of awesome, good, really creative new stuff across genres: rock, metal, punk, hardcore. So yeah, I really hope people actually think about where they use their money, because in the end, that actually matters. Using the money to go and see local bands, buy their T-shirt, and pay for the ticket. It's cheap, but it actually matters.
Absolutely. And speaking on that, I wanted to ask you, what is the best way to get a physical copy of the album and any merchandise that you have?
Yeah, so we don't have merchandise yet. I think once we know for certain that we'll do something live, then we'll probably get into that. I've got to say also the reception of the album, we didn't know what to expect. So it's only been out there for a couple of weeks. So it's been really positive. So now we're kind of reacting to it. The album is available through our label, Inverse Records web shop, and do ship to the US as well. So you can get the album through Inverse and they'll ship there, or you can also buy it on our Bandcamp and we'll send it to you. Either way works fine. We have enough CDs to send anywhere.
Lastly, I wanted to ask you if you could give a message to your fans, what would that message be, my friend?
It's the one we talked about at this point. Support your local bands, support the upcoming bands, and really think about where you spend your money. It's terrible to say that, but it actually does matter. So support your local venues and the bands, because that's where new music comes from. And don't forget, the music is, in the end, it was created it's a community thing. So sure, it's great to listen to an album by yourself and stream it on whatever service you use and share it on social media and so on. But music is still best live, because it's a live thing. It's for people to come together and experience that together. So going to the shows is also a community thing, and it can be really healthy for you as well as an individual. So it's one of the best things you can do for your own mental health. Go see bands locally.
I wanted to take a moment to thank you, my friend, for creating an album that I enjoyed from top to bottom. You guys are on a great path, and I can't wait to see what lies ahead for you, my friend.
Thank you. Really appreciate the words. And we've created music, obviously, for ourselves, but also for people like you who actually take the time to listen to it, because it's not easy music to get into. So I really appreciate that. But thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you, my friend. And you enjoy the rest of your evening, and have a few for me, my friend.
Will do, certainly. Have a good one, Bob.
All right, take care. Cheers.